Hey moviegoers, this is Everyone's a Critic. I'm Nicole Harrington, one of the new additions to MUTV's E23, and a true horror movie fanatic. To say I was excited for the new It movie would be an understatement. The first movie clearly left an opening for the second movie to take a giant leap forward. So how did they do? Well, before seeing the movie, many fans, including myself, were fearful due to the Rotten Tomatoes score of 62%. After seeing the film myself, I don't know if I'd go as low as that rating, but I definitely wouldn't put it in my top favorite movies of the year. If it wasn't already obvious, spoilers are definitely coming ahead. The opening scene is set in a carnival, which obviously makes sense, because if you didn't know, it takes the form of a clown. Again, to make his return. It returns by indulging in the heart of a gay man who was thrown off a bridge by pathetic adult bullies. Personally, I was confused why the film decided to use a grown man as its first victim when its whole persona is eating kids. In my opinion, I would have used the scene of a young girl getting lured to her impending death under the bleachers during a baseball game as the opening scene. It's a kid, and it fits in better with the storyline. The firefight scene with the young girl also doesn't really connect to anything else in the plot. The Losers Club isn't introduced until Mike stumbles upon the first murder scene and decides to call all of his fellow club members. The Derry natives have moved on to bigger, but maybe not better things. Whether it's struggling in a career path, dealing with a controlling wife, or being trapped in an abusive relationship, their futures probably didn't pan out the way they thought they would. The exception to this may be Richie's rise to fame in stand-up comedy and Ben's very obvious glow-up. This honestly was one of my favorite parts of the film for obvious reasons. From there, they reunite in Derry for a not-so-normal dinner party. So once the disappearance of Stanley comes up and the fortune cookies start dancing across the table, this is certainly not the case. Other than Mike, the gang's memory of the events seemed to be very hazy. They then realize that the farther they get from the town, the harder it is to remember their past. After Mike catches them up to speed on exactly what happened 27 years ago, their mission is underway. The Losers Club splits up to get tokens from their past to sacrifice to it. These tokens range anywhere from a real arcade token to the old poem that Ben wrote for Beverly when their middle school love was doing less than blossoming. Truthfully, this part of the movie is probably the most significant and well thought out sequence in the film. It brings each character back to their childhood and gives us a better insight into who they are. The one that really sticks out is Richie's coming out story and his struggle to discover who he is through his life. They also allude to Richie having a crush on one of his friends, carving initials with someone else's in a fence post. The ironic thing about this moment is that it also happens to be, in my opinion, one of the movie's biggest missteps. During this moment, they also depict a flashback of Richie at Stanley's bar mitzvah. The two make eye contact and share what I thought was a moment, and was ready to see R and S written on that fence post. After the movie's climactic ending, it shows the initials, which happen to actually be R and E, portraying that Richie actually had a crush on his hypochondriac-ridden friend Eddie. I like a plot twist just as much as anyone, but this seemed to be more like a misdirection to me, and I wasn't here for it. Team Stitchy for life. The movie doesn't have an interesting scene paralleling the first It that some may find cheesy, but I personally enjoyed the scene and thought it added depth to Bill's character. If you've seen the first movie, which I'm hoping you have, you know that Bill's brother, Georgie, was one of It's victims after he loses his paper boat down a sewer drain. Bill struggles with the guilt that he wasn't there to protect Georgie, so when It comes back and threatens Bill with the death of another Derry boy, Bill fights to save him. This scene takes place in a funhouse mirror maze, which I thought was a great way to tie in It's character with the idea that they're all trying to get out of this maze of issues. Bill ends up not being able to save the boy and uses his death as motivation to end this loop of disaster. The final fight scene is certainly the make or break moment in the movie for both the plot and the cinematography. The tokens end up not doing the trick, and they're stuck in the same situation as the last movie, a bunch of misfits versus a monster. The movie then relies on CGI effects and jump scares to finish off the film. Although they're remarkably well done, and I definitely jumped out of my seat a few times, I personally am not one for jump scares because I think the deep, scary stories are a bit more terrifying. They also throw in one final quirky love scene between Ben and Beverly that makes their tension actually become something real, and I'm definitely here for it. The final takedown of It takes on an angle that I personally enjoyed. The tables have turned and the Losers Club fights It with hurtful words rather than physically fighting the creature. This symbolizes the idea that words have just as much impact as actions do. With one squeeze, they destroy now tiny It's heart in the end. He becomes just another memory to Derry's already dark history. Overall, the movie was an enjoyable experience, even though I think the 2-hour and 50-minute runtime could be cut down just a bit. I'd recommend going to see it, but if you're looking for a perfectly thought out script and thoroughly character development, be prepared to be less than satisfied. If I were a professional reviewer, I'd give it a solid 8 from me. So what did you think of the It sequel? Be sure to let us know on Twitter at MUTV23. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.